Has anyone ever given you the cold shoulder? Have you ever had the experience of being ignored or excluded? I know I have. Last year, I worked at the National Science Foundation, which is a government agency that promotes science and engineering through research and education. One aspect of the job that I particularly enjoyed was working on programs that required scientists from different disciplines to collaborate. There was one meeting I had to attend, and when I got there were already a number of people in the conference room. Most people were involved in conversation, but when I walked in, it was like the music stopped. I mean, silence. And I thought, here we go with that "you look like Michelle Obama" thing again. But one very inquisitive soul broke the silence and asked, "What's your area?" I said that I was director of the Science of Organizations program, and the person responded, very dismissively, I might add, "Oh, you're a social scientist." And everybody went back to their conversation. It was at that moment that I realized I was being excluded for being a social scientist. Research shows that when it comes to exclusion, there is actually a thing called the cold shoulder, as people who are alienated experience lower body temperatures. Researchers at the University of Toronto conducted an experiment where they asked people to recall a time when they were either socially included or socially excluded. Interestingly, those who recalled the time when they were excluded perceived the temperature of the room to be lower than it actually was. The other thing that was really interesting is that those people who were excluded had a greater desire for warm food and beverages, like hot soup and hot coffee. Maybe this explains the secret to Starbucks' success, right? The company does say our work is more than the perfectly crafted beverage, it's about human connection. I guess they found a way to capitalize on all of those cold shoulders in the world. The word exclusion derives from the Latin root ex, which means out of, and claudo, which means to shut or to close off. So it makes sense that the term would be used to describe the experience of being prevented from participating in some meaningful aspect of life. And we hear about these experiences all the time. For example, we hear about women being excluded from positions of power or the old boys network. We hear about people being excluded on the basis of access to information and technology or the digital divide. Remarkably, however, we can exclude others on any basis. There was a third grade teacher in the 1960s, Jane Elliott, who decided to do an exercise with her class to teach a lesson on prejudice. So one morning, she divided the class based on eye color, the blue eyes and the brown eyes. And she gave the blue eyes more privileges. She gave them access to the water fountain. She gave them the option of an extra helping of food at lunch. She gave them more playtime at recess. So I'm sure you can guess what happened. Those poor, poor brown eyes. I'm brown-eyed, by the way. Those poor brown eyes were picked on and ostracized by those evil blue eyes. Which goes to show that exclusion can occur on any basis, even something as simple as eye color, or being a social scientist. To prevent exclusion from occurring, we now find ourselves making a more concerted effort to be inclusive at work, in schools, and in society. But what does inclusion really mean? Social scientists use the term to describe environments where individuals, regardless of demographics, background, or experiences, feel valued and respected and have the opportunity to reach their full potential. So inclusive environments are those in which people, typically those who have historically been outsiders, are accepted and respected and have equal access to opportunity. But the term inclusion is also used in the physical or hard sciences. Geologists use the term to date rocks according to their chronological age. So an inclusion is actually a rock fragment that's enclosed in another rock. So in determining relative age, geologists conclude that the larger rock, the one containing the inclusion, must be younger than the actual inclusion rock fragment itself. Mathematicians use the term inclusion to describe the relationship between two sets of objects. So one subset is included in another subset if all of the objects in that first set are part of the second set. So let's just say you have a subset A, which is 1, 2, 3. You have a subset B, which is 1, 2, 3, 4. Subset A is included in subset B. Notably, however, the reverse isn't true. Subset B is not included in subset A. Engineers use the term to describe the properties of building materials. An inclusion is considered to be a foreign particle in building materials, such as stone or steel. But because the inclusion is an impurity in the materials, it's considered to be a defect, which makes that material more susceptible to cracks. So if we compare these perspectives, we can actually see a common theme. Whether we're talking about organizations or rocks or numbers or building materials, inclusion is about something being part of something else. However, the parts still remain separate and distinct. So this tells me two things. One, I may not have been so different than the other scientists in that conference room. But two, inclusion may not be the remedy for all of the cold shoulders in the world. Maybe what we need to do is have something other than inclusion. And yeah, I said it, we need something other than inclusion. But I have an idea of what that might be. I think we need to combine our diverse perspectives in order to develop new ways of thinking. I'll give you an example. When Microsoft developed the controller for the Xbox, it was wildly unpopular. Gamers hated it because they thought it was too big. People often joke that you have to have hands the size of baseball gloves in order to use it. But Microsoft partnered with a Japanese designer who knew popular culture very well, particularly fashion and anime, and helped Microsoft take a more imaginative perspective on the redesign of the controller. That collaboration resulted in the controller that we actually use today. Beyond new ways of thinking, I think we need to combine our diverse experiences to develop new ways of learning. This TEDx conference is a perfect example of it because it brings together all these people of different backgrounds to interact, share knowledge and ideas, and collaboratively engage in the process of discovery and innovation. I also think we need to combine our diverse approaches to develop new ways of doing things. I mean, it wasn't so long ago that we had to go to a store or a library to buy a book. We had to, maybe pick up a phone or type more than 140 characters to get in contact with somebody. And if we wanted help with problem solving, we had to rely on our own personal networks. But because things like e-readers, tweets, and crowdsourcing are so prevalent, they were just added to the Oxford English Dictionary this year. What I'm suggesting is that we need to synthesize our diverse perspectives and experiences and approaches to ignite change, to do something different, to create something new. I'm suggesting that rather than focus on including each other, we should focus on synthesizing these perspectives. Maybe what we need is something different, not inclusion, but fusion, right? We know that fusion is about taking two lightweight atoms and they combine to actually form this bigger, heavier one. More importantly, however, it's the energy that's generated in that process that produces one of the most powerful impacts in the universe. So perhaps we can combine our thinking, our experiences, our approaches to develop these new ways of, learning and doing things that really has a powerful impact on this world. I have to talk to some physicists a little bit more about this fusion idea. I mean, I am just a social scientist. Thank you.